In 2012, Need for Speed Most Wanted threw you into Fairhaven fast. A short tutorial, a handful of upgrades to chase, and then that was it. Just cars, cops, and a city built to be driven hard. Developed by Criterion Games, this wasn't really the Most Wanted people were expecting. It sure borrowed the name, but it ignored pretty much all of the rulebook and it leaned really hard into Criterion's arcade DNA. And that decision split the fanbase. Some players still swear by it, while others never forgave it. And more than 10 years later, there's a really good question to ask. Is Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 actually a good game? Or is it just being carried by its famous name?
Change everything you are and everything you are. Your number has been called. Fights and battles have begun. Revenge will surely come. Times are ahead.
Today we're going back to Fairhaven, the driving, the cops, the structure and the feel, to see whether this game earns its reputation, or if the arguments around it were actually more interesting than the game itself. Before judging Need for Speed Most Wanted, you have to meet it on its own terms. And by that I mean, the game is not trying to simulate a career, a garage fantasy, or your usual Need for Speed style rise to the top, like we all know. It's trying to keep you moving from the beginning. Everything in its design points towards immediacy and flow. And once you see that, I promise you, a lot of its controversial decisions suddenly make sense. The game doesn't exactly believe in the idea of earning cars in the traditional way. You don't really save up money, unlock a dealership, or finally buy the one car you've been chasing for hours. Instead, the cars just exist in the world. You find one parked somewhere in Fairhaven, you take it, and from that moment on, the game asks you one question. What are you gonna do with it? And that changes your relationship with cars completely. They're not long-term projects or emotional investments anymore, they're just opportunities. If a car clicks with you, that's great. If it doesn't, there's no sunk cost keeping you stuck. You just move on. This fully kills analysis paralysis. You're not staring at menus wondering if you picked the wrong build. You're just driving already. You're already learning and you're already pushing yourself. The only exception being the boss cars, but I'll get into that later. And this whole thing means that the car doesn't dictate your identity, but your driving does. There's no career ladder telling you where you are and what comes next. There's no chapter 3 or tier 2 or whatever the fuck badge reassuring you that you're playing the game correctly. Progression in a way becomes spatial, not linear. Races appear as you drive, events unlock because you went somewhere, not because you ticked a box. Speed points, the in-game's XP system, quietly accumulates until the game decides you've earned a shot at a boss. Your map slowly fills with possibilities, not instructions. And you advance by going places, which means that two players can have wildly different experiences early on depending on where they drive, which races they trigger, and which cars they stumble into first, which makes the city, in a way, an interface. And the game never stops you to say, you're ready for this or that. It just puts the event or challenge or whatever on the map and waits to see if you'll take it. Eventually, as you learn the map, you start recognizing roads, you remember where jumps lead, and none of that really matters on its own. And it only becomes relevant when something goes wrong or when something starts chasing you. You see where I'm going with this? They're not side content, they're definitely not a novelty. Police chases are straight up baked into the core loop. You don't opt into them, they happen because you're playing the game the way it wants to be played. Any race can turn into a chase, any chase can spiral into a problem. And the cops in this game, they're not especially nuanced, they're definitely not realistic. They're loud, they're fast, they don't play fair, you know, the usual stuff. Roadblocks appear in bad places, units spawn where they're convenient, not where they make sense, cars ram you instead of chasing cleanly. And unlike the other games, the police escalation in MW 2012 is local and reactive. It's not a global timer ticking in the background like in Most Wanted 2004 or Carbon. It's not punishing you for simply playing. Heat rises because you stay in the chase, because you hit things, because you keep pushing instead of disengaging. The game is responding directly to your choices. And that's what makes the system work. At low heat, the cops are manageable, they're aggressive, but readable. You can break line of sight, take a jump, cut through a side street, get out clean. The game gives you room to breathe. As heat climbs, the margin disappears. More units show up, roadblocks get tighter. The cops, they become overwhelming, and that's intentional. The goal isn't to outplay them forever, it's to recognize when the chase has crossed the line from survivable to risky. And this whole thing is how the systems snap together. Map knowledge matters because escape routes aren't obvious at speed. Driving skill matters because one bad landing can fuck you up. And car choices matter less than your ability to stay composed when everything goes sideways. Everything so far, from map knowledge to the cops, only works if the driving can actually hold it together. And this is where the game becomes genuinely divisive because it's trying its own thing. Cars in Most Wanted 2012 are fast, responsive, and slightly unstable by design. You're rarely cruising, really. Even at moderate speeds, the handling always feels like it's leaning forward a little, like it wants you to commit to the next input already. And that constant sense of motion is what keeps the game tense, even when nothing is technically happening. The handling model sits in an awkward middle ground between grip and drift, and it's hard to say whether it's intentional, but I hope it is. You can brake to drift, sure, you don't have to. You can take corners clean, you don't have to. What matters here is more whether you can exit the situation with speed and control, not whether you trace the ideal racing line. And it kind of becomes obvious the moment you clip traffic or you land a jump slightly sideways, you oversteer, whatever. Because in a more rigid handling model, that's a reset. But in this game, it's kind of a recovery check. The game gives you just enough control mid-mistake to save it if you react quickly. Steering inputs matter a lot, throttle matters a lot, but panic makes everything worse. And that's also why speed feels really dangerous here. In a way, it often just doesn't in arcade racers. Traffic density, narrow streets, uneven terrain, they all work together to make high speed feel earned instead of comfortable. And this is where Criterion's DNA shows most clearly. If you've played Burnout Paradise, the philosophy should be familiar to you. The difference is that Most Wanted 2012 replaces Burnout's takedown mechanic with this really cool flow, where crashing into others isn't the goal anymore, it's surviving all the garbage that the game throws at you. And that's why people bounce off this game so hard. If you want precision, consistency, that type of deal, it will feel really messy. But if you're looking for flow, improvisation, momentum, chaos, you will notice that the game feels really alive. It's about staying functional at high speeds, while the game throws variables at you. Traffic, cops, terrain, your own bad decisions, whatever. And that's why opinions on this game are so extreme. If that feeling lands, the rest of the game suddenly makes sense and you will enjoy the fuck out of it. But if it doesn't, then no amount of design theory will save it. An equally controversial topic is the soundtrack, which is an absolute mess genre-wise, and that's not a hot take. It jumps from electronic to hip-hop to bass-heavy noise with zero concern for cohesion. If you like the tracks, I guess you're in luck. If you don't, the game doesn't really care. The music is there to keep the energy up, not to define Fairhaven as a place like the previous Most Wanted game did with the heavy metal and the really aggressive electronica. The music is just here to keep you moving. It's not trying to dynamically remix itself or meaningfully react to what you're doing besides getting put for a fucking equalizer every time you press the nitrous button. It's just background. You could mute it, throw on your own playlist, and the game would still play basically the same. Where the sound design actually pulls its weight is probably in the information it provides. Because the engine sounds are heavily exaggerated, sometimes to the point of just straight up sounding funny. But they're clear. You can hear acceleration, you can hear braking, loss of traction, no need to look at the HUD. And that, in my opinion, matters way more than realism when you're flying through traffic at ridiculous speeds. Police sirens are another great example of it. They're mixed very aggressively. They cut through everything. Music, traffic, engine noise. You just immediately know you got a tail. And that's kind of the theme with the game's sound overall. It's not expressive, not immersive, it's just functional. That's the only word that comes to mind. It's not bad, it's functional. And that's fine, because the game doesn't need mood, it just needs clarity. The driving is fast, the cops are aggressive, maps tight. The sound exists there just to keep all of that legible when everything is going wrong at once. So, no. Sound design isn't something you sit back and appreciate. It's just something you feel, rather, when you're barely holding things together. I guess if you're looking for subtlety or atmosphere, wrong game. Alright, let's stop being polite about it. Calling the game Need for Speed Most Wanted? Huge mistake. The second that name was announced, the game was fucked, purely because of what people expected. Nobody booted it up thinking, cool, new arcade racer. They booted it up thinking about 2004, 2005, Blacklist, Razor, cutscenes, a whole rise from nothing power fantasy. And this game gives you none of that. No Blacklist, no story worth caring about. I mean, not like 2005 did anyway. No characters, no slow climb, no emotional bond with your car. Because, you know, the game just straight up expects you to abandon it within 5 minutes. So instead of asking, does this design work? People went, why the hell isn't this the game I remember? And that's just a losing battle every single time. If this exact same game launched as, I don't know, Need for Speed Fairhaven or Need for Speed Pursuit, literally anything fucking else that didn't poke the nostalgia bear, the conversation would have been very different. People would argue about handling, co-ops, map design, you know, normal video game shit. Instead, every design choice got labeled a flaw. Instant access to cars, broken. No story, lazy. No ownership grind, soulless. If you look really closely, you will notice it's not criticisms, it's just nostalgic disappointment that's wearing a critique costume. Sure, you can still argue whether that was the right call, you know, to call the game that. That's fair. But the name, it really made sure that the argument never happened cleanly. Because once you slap Most Wanted on the box, people aren't evaluating the game in front of them. They're more mourning the one they wanted back. So yeah, when people say this doesn't feel like Most Wanted, they're right. It never fucking wanted to. And that one decision poisoned the conversation before the game even had a chance to speak for itself. Alright, we're done with the framing, context, nostalgia disclaimers. Let's answer the big question. Is it actually a good game? And Most Wanted, in my opinion, is a good game, but only if you judge it for what it actually is, not what the name told you it would be. When it works incredibly well. The driving under pressure is excellent. Not clean, not precise, very tense. You're constantly making micro decisions at speed, constantly recovering from near misses, constantly trying not to screw yourself 5 seconds from now. The cops give weight to everything you do, the city rewards knowledge, and the whole game is built around momentum instead of long-term planning. There's confidence to that design, and that confidence comes with a few trade-offs. And this is kind of where the cracks show. There's basically no emotional hook, no story, no characters, no real sense of I've come a long way by the end. Progress exists, yes, however it's abstract. You unlock things, you beat rivals, you move forward, but the game never stops to make any of it feel significant. Cars are disposable, which is cool mechanically, but it also means nothing sticks, very few moments linger once the controller's down. And for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. So here's the cleanest way to put it. If you need structure, story beats, and that constant good job feeling, the game's going to piss you off, straight up. But if you're here for momentum, for things spiraling, for holding it together at stupid speeds while the game keeps stacking pressure, that's where the game shines most. And that's also why it's still weirdly modern. It plays more like an arcade roguelike than a traditional racing career. Short bursts, high risk, quick resets, no sentimentality. So yeah, it's not the sequel people wanted, and yeah, the name absolutely fucked it. But stripped of that baggage, it's a sharp, confident arcade racer that knows exactly what it's doing, even if it refuses to hold your hand or tell you a story about it. Most Wanted 2012 is simply misunderstood. It's misunderstood because it didn't care whether you were on board or not. Honestly though, that's kind of its biggest strength.